My sister-in-law warned me not to sit near her husband, so I sat with the divorce lawyer instead. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emily. I'm 35 years old, and I've been married to my husband, Daniel, for 10 years. When I first met him, I thought I had finally found the kind of partner I could build a real future with. He was charming, reliable, and someone I believed I could trust with every part of myself. Life with him wasn't always perfect, but I thought we had a good marriage, the kind of marriage where two people worked through problems together. One of the reasons I fell so quickly into our life together was because of how close he seemed to be with his family. His sister, Rachel, welcomed me like I had always been part of their circle. She was younger than both of us, a little fiery, and always had something to say. I liked her honesty. I thought it was refreshing that she spoke her mind, even if it sometimes came out a little sharp. At first, being around Daniel's family felt easy. I would spend weekends with them, holidays at their house, and I genuinely felt like I belonged. Rachel and I grew close enough that we would talk on the phone sometimes without Daniel being involved. She would ask about my job, about our plans, or just check in. I thought she cared about me, and maybe she did in her own way. But every once in a while, Rachel would make these comments about her brother. They weren't direct accusations, but they had a sting to them. She would laugh and say things like, "You better keep your eye on Daniel. He's always been a bit of a charmer." Or she'd roll her eyes if another woman complimented him and say under her breath, "That's Daniel for you." At first, I laughed along with her. I told myself it was just sibling teasing, the kind of thing sisters say when they know their brothers a little too well. I didn't want to overthink it. I trusted my husband, and I didn't believe Rachel meant anything serious by her words. Still, the more she said them, the harder it became to completely ignore the feeling that maybe there was something behind those comments. I kept brushing it off. I told myself that Daniel was devoted to me, that our marriage was strong. I wanted to believe that Rachel was just protective, maybe even a little jealous that her brother's attention was divided now that he was married. So, I laughed off her warnings and tucked them away in the back of my mind. I wish now I had paid more attention. At the time, though, I thought love and trust were enough to hold us together. I thought Rachel was just being Rachel, saying things without really meaning them. But soon enough, I would learn how wrong I was. Rachel invited us over for dinner one Saturday evening. It wasn't unusual. She often liked to host, and Daniel never turned down a chance to be around his sister. I didn't think anything of it as we got ready, and I looked forward to catching up, having some good food, and relaxing with family. When we arrived, Rachel greeted us at the door. She hugged me, but something about the way she held on a little longer than usual caught me off guard. Her smile looked normal enough, but her eyes gave away something heavier. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just tired from cooking. The kitchen smelled wonderful, garlic, butter, something roasted in the oven. I offered to help, and Rachel quickly said yes, almost like she wanted me away from the others. While I was setting out plates, she suddenly leaned in close, her voice low and sharp. "Do yourself a favor. Don't sit near my brother tonight. Just trust me." I froze, holding a stack of napkins in my hands. Her tone wasn't playful, not like the offhand jokes she used to make. This was serious. I stared at her, waiting for her to explain, but she just shook her head, pressed her lips together, and turned back to the oven like she hadn't said a word. My heart pounded, but I forced a smile and went along with it. I wanted to ask her what she meant, but the words stuck in my throat. Why would she say something like that? Why tonight of all nights? When dinner was ready, everyone gathered around the table. The seating seemed casual, but I couldn't stop thinking about Rachel's warning. I ended up across from Daniel instead of next to him, telling myself it didn't matter. Maybe she just wanted me to see something from a distance. That's when I noticed it. Daniel leaning just a little too close to Jenna, Rachel's best friend. Jenna laughed at something he said, touching his arm in a way that felt far too comfortable. Daniel didn't pull back. He let her hand linger there while he smiled at her, the kind of smile he used to give me when we first started dating. I tried to laugh along when the group joked, tried to ignore the tight knot forming in my stomach. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe Rachel's warning had just put the idea in my head. Still, every time I glanced across the table, I caught Daniel giving Jenna these small looks, his hand brushing against hers when he passed a dish. Rachel sat stiffly, her eyes darting between the two of them. She barely touched her food, and I could tell she saw it too. I kept my face calm, pretending nothing was wrong, but inside I couldn't shake her words. Don't sit near him. By the time dessert came out, I was smiling and making small talk, but Rachel's warning had taken root. I couldn't forget the way she whispered it, like she was trying to save me from something I didn't yet understand. After that dinner, I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. The way Rachel had warned me, the way Daniel leaned in toward Jenna, and the quiet stiffness in Rachel's posture all stayed with me. I tried to let it go, but the smallest things started catching my attention, things I had ignored before. Daniel had always worked late sometimes, but now I noticed it happen more often. He'd come home past midnight, saying he had client calls or last-minute meetings. When I asked simple questions, he grew defensive. His phone was always glued to his hand. If I walked into the room, he'd tilt the screen away, typing quickly before locking it. When I asked why, he'd laugh it off and say, "You're being paranoid, Em. Do you really think I'd hide something?" The word paranoid stung every time. It made me feel small, like I was imagining things that weren't there. I'd leave the conversation embarrassed, convincing myself he was right. But deep down, something kept nagging at me. The thing that unsettled me most was the way he behaved around Jenna. They had this playful rhythm, these inside jokes I didn't understand. She would say something, and he'd laugh before she even finished, like they shared some private language. Whenever I tried to join in, I felt like the outsider, like the third wheel in my own marriage. Rachel, though, didn't laugh. At first, I thought she was just irritated by Jenna's personality, but then I started to notice how her mood changed whenever Jenna was around. She grew quiet, withdrawn. She avoided looking at her directly, like the sight alone made her angry. It all came to a head at another family gathering, a casual Sunday barbecue in Rachel's backyard. Everyone was setting up chairs, chatting, and Rachel made a point of dragging hers far away from Jenna's. She didn't even try to hide it. When Jenna attempted to sit beside her, Rachel stood up, muttering something under her breath, and moved across the yard. The air was thick with tension, but no one said anything. Daniel carried on like nothing was happening, laughing with Jenna as if the entire world had narrowed down to just the two of them. I sat frozen, pretending to sip my drink, my eyes moving between the three of them. That was the moment it really sank in. There was history here, something I didn't understand yet. Rachel's warnings, her coldness, her refusal to sit near Jenna, it wasn't random. She knew something, and I was the one being left in the dark. I smiled through the evening, trying to keep up appearances, but inside I was unraveling. I could no longer tell myself it was harmless or that I was imagining things. Rachel's behavior made it clear. Whatever was going on between Daniel and Jenna, it wasn't new. It had been there all along, hiding in plain sight. One night, after Daniel had gone to bed, he left his phone charging on the dresser. That almost never happened. He usually kept it in his pocket or face down on the nightstand. I sat there staring at it, my heart racing. I knew I shouldn't, but something inside me pushed harder than the guilt. I picked it up, and for the first time, his passcode worked. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through his messages. Most of them looked ordinary, work, friends, but then I saw Jenna's name. My chest tightened. I tapped it open, and my stomach dropped. The messages weren't casual. They weren't friendly. They were explicit, filled with things no wife should ever have to read. Plans to meet at hotels. Details about nights together. Words that made me feel sick to my core. And they went back months, longer than I wanted to admit. I sat there, frozen, reading line after line. Every warning Rachel had given me echoed in my mind. Don't sit near him. At the time, I didn't understand. But now, I knew she had been trying to shield me from a truth I hadn't been ready to see. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake beside Daniel, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the man I had built a life with could betray me so completely. When the sun came up, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I woke him up and said his name firmly. "Daniel, we need to talk." He groaned, rolled over, and rubbed his eyes. "What now, Em?" I held up the phone. I saw the messages. For a moment, his face went pale. Then he sat up quickly, his voice sharp. "What the hell are you doing going through my phone? That's private." I kept my voice steady, though my insides were shaking. "Don't turn this on me. I read everything. You and Jenna. How long has it been?" He ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head. "You're twisting things. You always do this, you're paranoid. It's not what you think." I slammed the phone down on the bed. "Stop lying. You've been cheating on me, Daniel. I have the proof right here." He was silent for a long moment, his jaw tight. Then he muttered, "Fine. Yes. But you've been distant, Emily. What did you expect? You've been so wrapped up in your own world. I needed someone who made me feel wanted." The words hit me harder than the messages. He was blaming me. After everything he had done, he dared to shift it onto my shoulders. My vision blurred with tears, but underneath the hurt, something else was boiling. Rage. Pure, unshakable rage. The betrayal cut deep, but the way he dismissed it, the way he tried to twist it back on me, lit a fire inside that I had never felt before. I looked at him, and in that moment, I knew things would never be the same. The morning after my fight with Daniel, I couldn't carry the weight of it alone. I needed answers, real answers, and the only person who seemed to know more than she ever said was Rachel. I called her, my voice shaking, and told her I was coming over. She didn't argue. She just said quietly, "Okay, I'll be here." When I arrived, she opened the door slowly, her eyes already red like she'd been expecting. I stepped inside without waiting to be invited, and went straight to the living room. My hands were clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palm. "Tell me the truth," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "How long have you known about Daniel and Jenna?" Rachel froze. She pressed her lips together, then sat down on the couch like her legs couldn't hold her up anymore. For a moment, she didn't speak. The silence made me angrier. "Don't you dare stay quiet now," I snapped. "You've been dropping hints for months. You warned me not to sit near him. What did you know, Rachel?" Her face crumpled, and she buried it in her hands. "I didn't want it to come out like this," she whispered. "Then maybe you should have told me sooner," I shot back. She looked up, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I've known for years, Emily. Not weeks. Not months. Years." Her words hit me like a physical blow. My breath caught, and I sank into the chair across from her, shaking my head. "Years? You let me stand beside him, love him, defend him, while you knew." Rachel's voice cracked. "I didn't know how to tell you. I tried. All those comments, the warnings, you think I was joking? I wanted you to start questioning him. I thought you'd figure it out without me tearing everything apart." I stared at her, unable to process the betrayal layered on top of betrayal. "Why didn't you scream it at me? Why didn't you grab me and say, 'Your husband is sleeping with my best friend'?" Her shoulders slumped, and she looked away. "Because I was ashamed. Ashamed of my brother. Ashamed of Jenna. And ashamed that it happened right in front of me." My heart pounded as I leaned forward. "What do you mean, right in front of you?" Rachel hesitated, then whispered, "That barbecue at my house 2 summers ago. I went into the yard to grab drinks, and I saw them behind the shed. They were kissing, like they didn't even care where they were." The memory of that day flashed in my mind. The laughter, the smell of grilled food, Daniel's hand resting so casually on my back. And all the while, he had slipped away to kiss another woman in his sister's yard. I felt sick, humiliated. Every detail now twisted in my head, every smile, every gesture, poisoned with new meaning. My anger spread to Daniel, to Jenna, and now to Rachel. She might not have cheated, but she had watched me live a lie and stayed silent. I stood up, my chest tight. "You should have told me everything the moment it happened. You owed me that." Rachel cried harder, reaching out, but I stepped back. I couldn't bear her touch. I was drowning in betrayal, and for the first time, I realized I wasn't just furious at Daniel and Jenna. I was furious at her too. After leaving Rachel's house, I drove around for hours, my head spinning. Anger, sadness, humiliation. They all twisted together until I couldn't tell which one hurt more. But in the middle of it, something inside me shifted. I realized yelling at Daniel wouldn't fix anything. Crying wouldn't change the betrayal. If I wanted to take back control, I had to stop reacting and start planning. That night, while Daniel slept peacefully beside me like nothing was wrong, I opened my laptop and searched for divorce lawyers in town. My hands trembled as I scrolled through names, but one stood out, Michael. He wasn't just any lawyer. Rachel had mentioned him before when she'd helped a friend through a messy divorce. She told me he was tough, sharp, and didn't let cheaters walk away clean. The next day, I made an appointment. Walking into Michael's office felt surreal, like stepping into another life. He was calm, professional, and looked at me with a steady gaze that made me feel, for the first time in weeks, like I wasn't completely lost. "Tell me everything," he said. I laid it all out, the messages, the affair, the years of lies. My voice cracked a few times, but I held myself together. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and nodded. "All right, Emily, here's what we do. You don't confront him anymore. Not until we're ready. You act normal. Smile. Play the part. Meanwhile, you start gathering every document you can, bank statements, pay stubs, credit card bill, and keep copies of those messages. We'll need proof." Hearing his instructions felt like breathing clean air after being suffocated. For the first time, I wasn't stumbling in the dark. I had a plan. I went home that evening and forced myself into routine. Dinner on the table. Small talk about his day. I smiled when he spoke, nodded when he gave excuses about working. Inside, I wanted to scream, but I didn't let it show. I knew that every calm word, every quiet nod, was another layer of armor. While Daniel showered, I slipped into his office and copied financial papers. When he left his wallet on the counter, I noted down the receipts tucked inside. Slowly, I built a file, my escape plan, piece by piece. The strangest part was the silence. I expected to feel crushed, but instead, there was a kind of power in holding everything in. He had no idea what I was doing. No idea that while he thought I was the same forgiving wife, I was already halfway out the door. At night, when he rolled over and reached for me, I turned slightly away, pretending to be asleep. My mind wasn't on him anymore. It was on the folder tucked inside my desk drawer, the one growing thicker every day. It was on Michael's steady voice telling me, "Patience, Emily. Timing is everything." And for the first time since this nightmare began, I believed him. When Rachel invited us all over for another family dinner, Daniel told me about it casually, like nothing had happened between us. He didn't know I already had my own plan. I smiled and said, "Of course we'll be there." Inside, I was already picturing how the evening would go. On the day of the dinner, I got dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made me feel strong rather than soft. While Daniel rushed around, talking on the phone, I sent a quiet message to Michael. He agreed to come, no questions asked. When he arrived at our house to ride with me, I introduced him to Daniel as a friend who wanted to join. Daniel raised his eyebrows, but he didn't argue. He just muttered something under his breath and walked to the car. At Rachel's house, everything smelled like roasted chicken and spices. Laughter filled the rooms, but beneath it all, I could feel the tension waiting to surface. We gathered around the table, and everyone began taking seats. That was when I made my move. Instead of sliding into the chair next to my husband, like I always had, I walked calmly to the empty seat beside Michael. I smiled at him as I sat down, my chair angled slightly away from Daniel. It was deliberate, and the room seemed to notice. Daniel's jaw tightened. I caught the quick flicker of irritation in his eyes as he glanced between me and Michael. He tried to keep his expression neutral, but I knew him too well. His hand gripped his fork harder than it needed to. Jenna, sitting nearby, shifted uncomfortably. She avoided looking at me, her laugh sounding forced when she tried to join in on a joke. I watched her twirl her hair nervously, the picture of someone who suddenly wasn't sure of her place at the table. Rachel sat across from me, and when our eyes met, she didn't say a word. But the corner of her mouth lifted in the faintest smirk. She knew exactly what I was doing, and for once, she didn't try to warn me. She let me play it out. Throughout dinner, I kept my composure. I passed dishes politely, joined in light conversation, and smiled at Michael as if he belonged there. Every time Daniel looked my way, I felt his frustration burning, though he stayed silent. Watching him squirm, watching Jenna shrink under the tension, gave me a sense of calm I hadn't felt in months. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to make a scene. Just sitting in that chair, beside the man who knew all of Daniel's secrets now, was enough to turn the evening on its head. Daniel had no idea that this was only the beginning, and for the first time in a long time, I enjoyed my meal. When dinner was over, Rachel began clearing plates, and everyone moved into the living room for coffee. The air felt heavy, like everyone was waiting for something. I sat down on the couch with Michael at my side. Daniel hovered near the doorway, arms crossed, his eyes flicking toward me again and again. Jenna stayed close to him, her body tense, as if she already sensed where things were going. I waited until the room was quiet, then I set my cup down carefully on the table. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. "I know about the affair," I said. The words landed like a stone in water, the silence rippling out until no one could escape it. Daniel's face went red instantly. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I had been building for weeks. I opened it slowly and laid out the contents on the coffee table. Screenshots of texts, copies of receipts, even hotel bookings with Jenna's name listed beside his. One by one, I spread them across the table for everyone to see. "This," I said calmly, "is what I'm talking about." Jenna's face drained of color. She stood up suddenly, her chair scraping the floor. "I don't have to sit here for this," she stammered, reaching for her purse. "Sit down," I told her firmly, my eyes locked on. She froze for a moment, then dropped back into her chair, shaking. Daniel exploded. His voice boomed through the room, louder than I had ever heard it. "You're vindictive, Emily. You went digging through my private life like some crazy woman. You've been planning this, haven't you? You just want to ruin me." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "No, Daniel. You ruined yourself." I just stopped pretending not to see it. He looked around the room, as if searching for someone to take his side, but no one spoke. Rachel stared at him with open disgust, her arms folded tightly. I leaned back slightly and gestured toward the man beside me. "Since you're so worried about what I've been planning, let me be clear. Daniel, meet Michael, my lawyer. He'll be handling everything from now on." The room fell into a stunned silence. Michael nodded politely, his calm presence cutting sharper than any raised voice could. Daniel's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Jenna covered her face with her hand. Rachel finally let out a breath, the tension in her shoulders easing as though she had been holding it in for years. She didn't smile, but I could see the relief in her eyes. For once, the truth was out, and there was no taking it back. I sat there in that silence, calm and unshaken, while Daniel's world cracked open in front of him. Daniel finally found his voice, and when he did, it came out like a roar. "You're all just sitting there letting her humiliate me? This is my wife, and you're just going to take her side." His eyes darted around the room, desperate for someone to back him up. No one moved. No one spoke. Rachel was the first to answer. She stood up slowly, her face hard. "Don't you dare try to make this about loyalty, Daniel. You did this to yourself. You had a wife who loved you, and you threw it away for a fling with my so-called best friend. Her voice cracked at the last part, but her anger held steady. Daniel turned toward his parents, but they wouldn't even meet his eyes. His mother shook her head, tears welling up, while his father sat stiff and silent. The message was clear. No one was standing with him. Jenna tried to shrink into her chair, but Rachel's glare found her. "You disgust me," she said flatly. "You walked into our home, into our family, and you destroyed it. Don't ever come near me again." Jenna's face burned red, and she grabbed her purse, but this time no one stopped her when she stumbled out the door. Daniel swore under his breath and ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. "You're making a mistake, Emily. You think you're clever, but you'll ruin yourself too. You can't just walk away from everything we've built." I let him rant because I knew what he didn't. Michael and I had already taken the steps. Accounts were frozen, documents secured, and protections put in place. He couldn't drain our savings, couldn't hide his income, couldn't trap me the way he thought he could. The safety net was already woven tight, and it was mine. When he finally looked at me again, his fury cracked, replaced by something else, fear. His voice dropped lower. "Emily, listen. We can fix this. I was stupid, but it didn't mean anything. I don't want to lose you." I didn't flinch. "You already did." He tried again, his tone softer, almost pleading. "Please don't do this. We can try counseling. We can." I cut him off. "No, Daniel. I'm done listening. I'm done forgiving. I'm done being made to feel crazy while you betrayed me in plain sight." Rachel stepped closer to me, placing a hand lightly on my shoulder. "You don't owe him another word," she said firmly. Daniel's face twisted, caught between anger and desperation, but I didn't look at him anymore. The man I thought I knew was gone, and all that remained was a stranger who had underestimated. For the first time in a long time, I felt steady. The lies were no longer mine to carry. They were his, and now everyone could see them for what they were. The weeks that followed were filled with paperwork, meetings, and long conversations with Michael. Every step felt heavy, but with each signature and each document filed, I felt more of the weight lifting off my shoulders. The divorce process wasn't easy, but it was steady, controlled, and for once it was on my terms. When it was all finalized, I kept the house. The place I had once feared would be tainted by lies became mine alone. I secured alimony too, enough to make sure Daniel couldn't leave me stranded after wasting years of my life. Watching him sign those papers, his hand trembling, was a moment I'll never forget. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him, like the power he once held over me had drained away with the ink on the page. Rachel came by a few days later. She brought a bottle of wine, her eyes full of questions she didn't ask. We sat on my porch, quiet at first. I didn't thank her, not exactly. I wasn't ready to forgive her for keeping the truth buried so long. But I told her I understood, that in her own twisted way, her warning had forced me to open my eyes. "You deserved better," she said softly, staring out at the yard. "I know," I replied. And that was all we said about it. Our relationship wasn't healed, not fully, but it wasn't broken beyond repair either. Maybe one day I'd let go of the anger I still carried toward her. For now, I was simply grateful that her words had planted the seed I needed to finally see Daniel for who he was. The last time I sat across from Michael in his office, it felt different. The first time, I had been trembling with rage and fear. This time, I sat straighter, calmer, almost light. The papers were done, the future was mine, and I no longer felt like a woman trapped in someone else's game. Michael smiled as he closed the file. "It's finished. You can move forward now." I nodded, feeling the truth of it settle deep inside me. For so long, I thought the end of my marriage would be the end of me too. Instead, it became the beginning of something stronger. As I walked out of his office, I thought back to that first warning Rachel had whispered, "Don't sit near him." At the time, I hadn't understood. But now I saw it clearly. She hadn't been pushing me away from Daniel just for one dinner. She had been trying to push me away from a lifetime of betrayal. Sometimes the person who warns you is the one who sets you free, and the person you thought you'd never sit beside becomes the one who helps you walk away.